Welcome to Somnia. Before we begin our journey tonight, I invite you to find your most comfortable position. Adjust your blankets, let your shoulders drop away from your ears, and take a deep, slow breath. Here, the world of noise and hurry does not exist. Here, there is only the story. If you find peace in these nightly travels, please consider subscribing to our sanctuary and liking this video. Your support helps us keep the fire burning and the stories flowing for all those seeking rest. Now, let the darkness outside your window become a velvet curtain. Clear your mind, follow the sound of my voice, and let us wander into the mysteries of the past. It is time to sleep. It is time for Somnia. Chapter 1. The White Silence. Close your eyes. Imagine, if you can, a cold so deep that it has a sound. It is a tightening, creaking sound, the sound of moisture freezing instantly in the air. Imagine a landscape where the horizon is erased, where the earth and the sky meet in a seamless, blinding shade of white. This is the northern Ural Mountains in Russia. It is a place of ancient stone, dense taiga forests, and winds that have blown across the world for thousands of years, carrying secrets that no human ear has ever heard. We are going back to the winter of 1959. It is a time before GPS, before satellite phones, before Gore-Tex jackets. It was a time when to explore the world meant to disconnect from it entirely. This is not a fast story. It is a story of footprints in the snow. It is a story of youth, of camaraderie, and of a silence that swallowed 9 lives whole. So, take a deep breath. Let the noise of your day fade away. Let us walk together into the snow. Chapter 2. The Spirit of the Age. To understand why 9 young people would willingly walk into one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth, we must understand who they were and where they came from. The year was 1959. The Soviet Union was in the midst of a period known as the Thaw. The oppressive, terrifying years of Stalin were over, and Nikita Khrushchev was in power. There was a sense of opening up, a slight warming of the cultural atmosphere, much like spring breaking through a long winter. For the young students at the Ural Polytechnic Institute, often called UPI, this was a golden age. These students were the children of the post-war generation. They were tough, they were intellectual, and they were romantic. In the Soviet Union at this time, tourism didn't mean staying in hotels or sitting on beaches. Sport tourism was a serious athletic discipline. It was about conquering nature through sheer will. It was about hiking, skiing, and rafting through the wild corners of the motherland. For these students, the mountains were an escape. In the city, life was regulated, crowded, and grey. But in the mountains, under the open sky, they were free. They could sing songs by the campfire. They could talk about life and love, and they could test their strength against the elements. At the center of our story is a young man named Igor Dyatlov. Igor was only 23 years old, but in the world of hiking, he was already a veteran. He was a 5th-year student in the radio engineering department. People who knew him described him as a man of deep thought and quiet authority. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but he was the one everyone listened to. He was serious, sometimes stubborn, but deeply respected. He had a brilliant mind for engineering. He had even built his own radio stove to bring on hikes, a device of his own invention to keep his friends warm. Igor had a dream. He wanted to complete a grade 3 hike. At that time, This was the highest difficulty rating for a ski tour in the Soviet Union. It required covering over 300 kilometers. That's nearly 190 miles, across difficult terrain, carrying all your own supplies in sub-zero temperatures. To complete this hike meant receiving the title of Master of Sport, a prestigious honor. He began to assemble his team. He didn't just pick anyone, he picked the best. He picked friends he had climbed with before, people he trusted with his life. Let's meet them one by one. As you listen, try to see them not as victims of a tragedy, but as living, breathing young people, full of hope and excitement for the journey ahead. There was Yuri Doroshenko. He was 21, a student of power engineering. He was known for his strength. He was a big, sturdy young man who could carry the heaviest loads without complaining. Interestingly, he had previously dated one of the girls in the group, Zina, but they had broken up. Yet, the bond of the mountains was stronger than awkwardness, and they remained close friends, trusting each other enough to face the Urals together. There was Lyudmila Dubinina, one of the two women in the group. She was only 20 years old, the youngest of them all, but do not let her age fool you. She was a strict, no-nonsense hiker. In a previous expedition, she had been accidentally shot in the leg by a hunter, and she didn't even cry. She was the group's treasurer, managing their rubles with a careful hand. She loved to sing, and she was fiercely loyal. There was Alexander Kolovatov, 24. He was a physics student, but he had already worked in a secret institute in Moscow. He was the intellectual, the methodical one. He smoked a pipe, which gave him the air of an old professor. He was known for his calm demeanor. When others panicked, Alexander would simply light his pipe and think. Then there was Zinaida Kolmogorova, known to her friends as Zina. She was 22. Zina was the soul of the group. She was incredibly popular, radiating a warmth that drew people to her. She was beautiful, strong, and experienced. During hikes, she was often the one tending to blisters or cheering up someone who was tired. Everyone loved Zina. Rustam Slobodin, 23, a quiet, athletic man. He was known for his endurance. He played the mandolin, a small string instrument he brought with him on the train, hoping to play it by the fire. He was a man of few words, but deep reliability. Georgy Krivonishenko, known as Yuri or Georgy. He was 23 and worked at a secret nuclear facility, the Chelyabinsk 40 plant. He was the joker of the group, always laughing, always playing pranks. He was a great friend of Igor Dyatlov. Nikolai Thibault Brignol, 23. His name sounds French because his father was a French communist who was repressed during the Stalin years. Nikolai was energetic, artistic, and funny. He was known for his distinctive hat and his boundless energy. And finally, the stranger, Semyon Solotaryov. He was much older than the others, 37 years old. He was a veteran of World War II, or the Great Patriotic War, as it was called. He had seen combat, he had medals, and he had gold teeth. He was a hiking instructor who needed this specific Grade 3 certification for his career. He asked to join Dyatlov's group at the last minute. The students didn't know him well, but he was charming. He knew a lot of songs, and he was physically tough. So, Igor accepted him. And there was one more, Yuri Yudin, 21 years old. He packed his bag, ready for the adventure of a lifetime. He did not know that fate had a different plan for him. Into the White Now, there were 9. The group moved deeper into the wilderness, following the frozen Lozva and Auspia rivers, the highways of the taiga. Snow was deep, waist-high in places, and they rotated the lead skier to conserve energy. Their diaries described the beauty of snow-covered trees and the bitter cold of -20 to 25 degrees Celsius, though they were prepared. At night, they set up their long canvas tent over spruce branches. Igor's stove warmed the tent, drying clothes and cooking millet soup. They drank hot tea and cocoa. Rustem played mandolin, and they wrote a satirical newspaper, the Evening Autorten, teasing each other. On January 31st, they reached the highlands and cached food on a platform for the return journey. Their final goal was Mount Autorten. But first, they had to cross the pass between height 1079 and another peak, the Mansi called 1079 Kholat Syakhl, the Dead Mountain, a barren place. On February 1st, late morning, they began the ascent. The weather worsened, wind howling, snow in their faces. They moved slowly, tired. Normally, hikers would descend to shelter, but Igor decided to camp on the exposed slope, perhaps as a test. Around 5 p.m., they dug a terrace in the snow and pitched the tent. They didn't light the stove, perhaps too tired, or the wind too strong. They ate cold food, put on wool socks, and huddled together for warmth. Outside, the wind screamed, piling snow against the canvas. Inside, they were safe and together, drifting off to sleep. And then, something happened. Silence. February 2nd dawned over the northern Urals, but there was no movement on the slope of Kholat Syakhl. The sun rose, a pale disk behind drifting snow. The wind sculpted the drifts, burying the edges of the canvas tent, smoothing over the night's disturbances. From above, only the vast, indifferent whiteness of the mountains was visible. Days passed. February 3rd, February 4th, February 5th. Down in the valleys, life continued. Timber workers felled trees. The Mansi herded reindeer. Trains chugged through snow-laden forests. But on height 1079, time had stopped. In Sverdlovsk, families checked calendars. The group was expected in Vichai around February 12th, and Igor Dyatlov was to send a telegram. Mission accomplished, returning home. February 12th arrived. The telegraph office remained silent. At first, there was no panic. Hiking in the Soviet wilderness could be delayed by storms or broken skis. They are just taking their time, people said. February 13th passed. February 14th, anxiety grew. Zina Kolmogorov's mother called the university. Igor Dyatlov's sister marked off the days. The silence from the mountains became heavy, almost suffocating. By February 16th, anxiety turned to dread. Colonel Ortyukov, head of the military department, was contacted. Families demanded answers, writing to Communist Party officials. Our children are missing. You must find them. The university tried to reassure them, but experienced climbers knew. Delays of a week were catastrophic. On February 20th, the order was finally given. The mountains would be searched. The Iron Birds. The rescue operation that followed was unprecedented in its scale. It wasn't just a few volunteers looking for lost friends. It became a military-grade operation. The first to volunteer were the fellow students, members of the Institute's tourism club. These were young men and women who had hiked with Dyatlov before. They packed their bags with a grim determination. They knew the risks. They knew that if Dyatlov was in trouble, it was something serious. Then came the military. Sappers, railway troops, and even prison guards with search dogs were mobilized. And then the sound of the wilderness changed. The silence of the Urals was broken by the rhythmic, thumping heartbeat of helicopters. Civilian and military helicopters took to the skies. Pilots flew low over the tree line, risking the unpredictable mountain drafts, scanning the white expanse below for any sign of life. A ski track, a plume of smoke, a colourful jacket. Imagine being in one of those helicopters. The cabin is cold, smelling of aviation fuel and stale tobacco. The noise is deafening. You are pressing your face against the freezing glass, your eyes watering from the strain of staring at endless white. Every shadow looks like a person. Every rock looks like a tent. But as you circle lower, you realize it is just a rock. It is just a shadow. On the ground, the search teams were divided into groups. They were dropped into different valleys to cover the most likely routes. One of these groups was led by a student named Boris Slobtsov. He was a sharp, capable young man. His team was dropped onto the slopes near Mount Autorten on February the 23rd. The conditions were brutal. The searchers were skiing into the same wind that had battered the Dyatlov group weeks earlier. The snow was so bright it burned their eyes. The wind was so loud they had to shout to be heard. They found nothing for 2 days. But then they met a group of Mansi hunters. The Mansi had seen something. They pointed the searchers toward the valley of the Auspia River. They had seen narrow ski tracks, not the wide, fur-lined skis of the hunters, but the narrow wooden skis of city tourists. The searchers followed the faint, wind-blown depressions in the snow. The tracks were old, barely visible, like ghosts of a path. They led up the river, and then, surprisingly, they turned away from the forest and headed up the exposed slope of Kolatsiakl. Boris Slobtsov and his teammate, Mikhail Sharavin, pushed ahead of the main group. They were young, fit, and driven by a desperate hope that their friends were just stuck somewhere, hungry but alive. It was February 26th. The afternoon sun was casting long blue shadows across the mountain. Slobtsov crested a small ridge on the slope of height, 1079. He squinted against the glare. About 300 meters away, he saw a small, dark shape breaking the smooth white surface of the snow. It wasn't a rock, it was too geometric. He signaled to Sharavin. They skied closer, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they approached, the shape became clear. It was a tent, the abandoned castle, and the trail of doomed steps. The tent was half collapsed. The canvas was covered in hard-packed snow. The poles were still holding part of the structure, but the middle had sagged. Slobtsov and Sharavin stopped a few feet away and called out, "Igor! Zina!" The wind snatched their voices. No answer, no movement. They moved closer, circling the tent. What they saw sent a chill through them. The tent had not just collapsed, it had been cut. Large vertical gashes on the downhill side flapped mournfully in the wind. Slobtsov cleared some snow from the entrance with an ice axe and peered inside. The interior was a chaotic time capsule. Near the entrance, the stove was disassembled and cold. Backpacks lined the floor as insulation. Boots, felt, and hiking were neatly arranged. Jackets, pants, personal items, a camera, a diary, money, and an unopened bottle of vodka remained. Slabs of salo and crackers suggested a snack was being prepared. No people. And the tent had been cut from the inside. Later, forensic analysis would confirm that, in a moment of frantic desperation, the hikers had slashed the canvas to escape instantly. Escape what? Slobtsov looked down the slope. The snow in front of the tent was hard and icy. No tracks right at the opening, but a little further down, in softer snow, they found them. Footprints. These were not ordinary hiking footprints. They were the footprints of panic. 8 or 9 sets, preserved as pedestal tracks, looked like ghostly pillars marching down the hill. Some showed bare feet, some soft woolen socks, some a single felt boot. Not a single set showed a person wearing 2 hiking boots. It was minus 30 degrees Celsius that night, a death sentence. Yet they walked, not ran. The spacing suggested a walking pace. They moved side by side, orderly, not scattering, heading toward the tree line about 1.5 kilometers away. Slobtsov followed the tracks with his eyes. They led down into the valley of the Lozva River, toward the dark silhouette of a large Siberian cedar at the forest's edge. After about 500 meters, the tracks disappeared under deeper snow. The radio operator, Nevelin, sent back, "We have found the tent. It is empty. The slope is bare. We are following tracks into the valley." The next morning, February 27th, searchers followed the footprints toward the forest. The descent was steep and difficult, especially imagining navigating it in a blizzard without shoes. At the bottom, near the woods, stood a massive Siberian cedar, its branches spreading wide. Underneath, the snow was trampled and stained with ash. A small fire had burned here, a desperate fire. Dusted with morning snow, the first 2 bodies lay, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Krivonishenko. The sight was heartbreaking. The 2 Yuris were side by side, stripped to their underwear, no jackets, pants, or hats. Krivonishenko lay on his back, arm over his head, Doroshenko face down. Their skin was a strange dark reddish brown. Their hands were burned and raw, with skin found on the bark of the cedar. Lower branches, up to 5 meters high, had been snapped off. In the freezing dark, hands numb from cold, the men had climbed the tree, perhaps to feed the fire or look back toward the tent. The fire had long burned out. The bodies were frozen solid. The searchers looked around. Only 2 of 9 hikers were here. They looked back up the slope toward the tent. A tiny dot on the white hillside, 1.5 kilometers away. And then they saw a hand sticking out of the snow. The line of heroes and the ghost. Camp. When the searchers found the 2 Yuris under the cedar tree, a heavy, somber realization set in. The group had been split, but why were 2 men left at the base of a tree in their underwear, while the others were nowhere to be seen? The searchers began a methodical line search, a row of men, shoulder to shoulder, moving like a human comb across the white face of the mountain. They held long steel probes and pushed them deep into the snow with every step. Thump, thump, thump. The only sound was the wind and the rhythmic strike of metal against frozen earth. It didn't take long for the mountain to give up its next secret. About 300 meters from the cedar tree, moving back toward the tent, they found Igor Dyatlov. He lay on his back, head toward the tent, as if even in his final moments his eyes were fixed on the shelter he had built. He wore a fur vest, sweater and trousers, but no boots. One hand clutched a small birch tree, a final anchor to the world. His face appeared almost peaceful, as if the cold had gently put him to rest. 500 meters further up the slope, closer to the tent, they found Zina Kolmogorova. Her discovery was heart-wrenching. she was lying on her side, buried under packed snow. Her tracks showed she had been crawling, dragging herself forward inch by inch through the freezing dark, lungs burning, fighting a wind determined to erase her. Traces of blood appeared near her face, but doctors said she died solely from the cold. She had fought until her heart simply had no more warmth to give. A few days later, the probes struck something else. Beneath 50 centimeters of snow, between Igor and Zina, lay Rustem Slobodin. He wore one felt boot on his right foot. The left was bare. This suggested that, when the event happened, Rustem was perhaps the only one who had time to grab even partial footwear before fleeing. The three of them died in a straight line, like a string of pearls dropped on the mountainside, all pointing toward the same hope. With 5 bodies found, the search didn't end. It became a haunting, months-long vigil. For weeks, the slopes of Kholat Shakil became a ghost camp. The military set up large heated tents for the searchers. At night, students and soldiers would sit around stoves, much like the Dyatlov group had done. But the atmosphere was heavy. The mountain seemed wrong. The wind didn't just blow, it moaned. Some searchers reported strange phenomena, glowing orange spheres drifting across the night sky, silent and eerie. Secret military rockets, atmospheric anomalies, or what the hikers had seen on their final night. As March turned into April, the snow was stubborn, 4 or 5 meters deep in the ravines, the height of a 2-story building. Searchers used mine detectors, dug trenches, creating a labyrinth of white walls. Every time a probe struck a rock or branch, adrenaline surged, followed by crushing disappointment. The 4 missing hikers, Lyudmila, Semyon, Alexander, and Nikolai, seemed to have evaporated. Investigators questioned the Mansi again. Did you attack them? Was this a sacred mountain? The Mansi shook their heads, speaking quietly of the mountain of the dead. They told of 9 hunters who had died on the same peak generations ago, a chilling coincidence. By early May, the iron grip of winter finally loosened. The sun stayed longer in the sky. Birds returned to the taiga. Snow softened. A small stream, tributary of the Lozva, began to melt in a deep ravine near the cedar tree. On May 4th, a searcher noticed clothing poking through the slush, a wool sweater fragment. They began to dig carefully. Layers of snow revealed a floor of cedar branches and clothing, a last-ditch shelter against the wind. The den was empty. They followed the stream a few meters further. Under 4 meters of snow and ice, they found the remaining 4 hikers, huddled together in the water of the melting stream. They were not simply frozen. They bore marks of a violent, inexplicable force. The nightmare deepened. The nightmare in the ravine and the final sleep. When the final 4 hikers were pulled from the melting stream in May, the search shifted from tragedy to horror. Until now, the deaths could be blamed on the cold. But the ravine revealed something far stranger. In Ivdel, Dr. Boris Vozrojdeny examined the bodies. Nikolai Thibault Brignol had a massive skull fracture with no external wounds. Lyudmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov had ribs snapped like dry twigs, yet their skin was intact. Lyudmila was missing her tongue and eyes. Semyon was missing his eyes. Scavengers seemed unlikely in the deep, frozen ravine. Even stranger, Kolovatov's and Krivonishenko's clothes tested positive for radiation. Trees were scorched in circular patterns. Searchers' reports of orange spheres and the hikers' last camera frames suggested something unexplained. By late May, the case was abruptly closed. Official documents read, "The cause of death was an overwhelming force which the hikers were unable to overcome. No names, no culprits, no explanation. Theories abound. A slab avalanche crushing the tent. Secret military tests creating pressure waves. Infrasound from the wind causing panic. Or the spirits of the mountain of the dead, according to Mansi legend." In the end, the how may matter less than the who. 9 young people, students, engineers, dreamers, went into the mountains for silence, challenge, and each other. Today, a small monument at Dyatlov Pass bears their names and faces. The wind still blows across Kolatsiakal. Snow still falls in the ravine. Igor, Zina, Rustem, Yuri, Alexander, Lyudmila, Nikolai, and Semyon have become part of the mountain. Their footsteps are gone, but their story echoes through the pines and frozen peaks. The mountain is now quiet, white, and peaceful. The hikers are no longer running, no longer cold. They are simply part of the history of the Great White North. Rest now. The journey is over, and the secrets of the pass remain safe within the snow.